This is Joanna Lilly. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Since its inception in 1949, Mental Health Awareness Month has been a cornerstone in addressing the challenges faced by millions of Americans living with mental health conditions. Although this month of recognition has been in existence for a while, stigmatization around mental health still exists. Throughout the month of May, we are bringing you episodes from the parent perspective to highlight this special month. Welcome to the Parent Series, brought to you by Success is Subjective.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilly.
This episode of the Parent Series interviews is with Jennifer Taylor. Her story isn't anonymous because she's sharing both her personal and professional experiences in this interview. Jennifer is the founder and managing consultant at Jet Ed Consulting. She specializes in helping families who need an alternative to public education, most of whom also need some sort of therapeutic intervention. This can result in a residential setting. She's also an IEP advocate, and as the mother of a son who has had an ASD/ADHD diagnosis since 2002, Jennifer has navigated the world of special education and therapeutic and learning differences boarding schools in her own life. With passion for helping parents navigate the Byzantine world of therapeutic education, Jennifer brings empathy and a strategy to her practice. Here's Jennifer. All right, Jennifer, thanks for being a guest on the Parent Series of the Success is Subjective podcast. If you're okay, I would love for you to just jump right in and kind of share a little bit of your story, like the backstory of what was going on with your child prior to even engaging in the treatment process.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me. This is one of my favorite topics since I get to do it every day anyway, working with families. But I think my story starts back when he was little, like many families where you have a child who's maybe harder to parent and confusing, but fast forward to middle school when his special ed supports weren't really getting him to make academic process. So for me, it started off with like, okay, what does school look like? I could kind of manage the behaviors at home, kind of just cobbling together with caregivers. But he had a one-on-one aide in 8th grade and basically lied about his hand hurting and got the aide to do all his work for him. We didn't know this till he hit high school, and he had no social skills. We put him in a special needs high school, and I should say he's on the spectrum, and we knew he had some anxiety, but that's about what we knew. And he started getting somewhat paranoid, like people are bullying me, I don't want to go to school. One day he just refused flat out to get in the van from the school back home. And so there I am running through traffic. If anybody lives in the Bay Area, I had to drive all the way from Marin County down to San Mateo at, busy traffic hour to pick him up because he was like, I'm not getting in the van unless you put me in the front seat. And they're like, well, somebody else's turn. So he wound up really struggling with freshman year, and the school said, we're not equipped to support him. We're a good learning differences school, but he needs therapy. And then I had him in an extracurricular program specifically for kids on the spectrum. And there was a therapist there, and she took me aside one day and said, we need to have a talk. He's not doing the program. He's being disruptive. He's refusing to participate. So some of the classic signs of everything I tried is not working, and really just came to a decision once he was asked to leave school his 9th grade year that we needed to do more. The toolkit was completely empty. And so that's when we started exploring, what does residential treatment mean? What does it mean for a kid on the spectrum? What does it mean for a kid who's kind of dysregulated? Like he would throw pillows at me. He'd run around the house and start screaming, hiding under the couch and throw pillows at me. So that's kind of where we got to the point where we needed to start exploring that. And it was super scary. It was like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. So.
And I imagine too, as a parent with a neurodiverse child too, and like you said, like, hey, we're applying all these tools, nothing's working, right? And at this point, we're just going to continue to use that analogy. Like the toolbox is empty. We got nothing. Yep. I imagine too, as a parent, like there's got to be a level of anxiety or your own kind of range of emotions that you're going through too, of like, how come this isn't coming together? So I'm just kind of curious, like, let's talk about this for a split second. And then I actually want to circle back to kind of the treatment journey for your son. But just as a parent, how did you handle what you were experiencing?
Oh, geez. Well, I've had a lot of therapy. So I would tell any parent who is having to make some difficult choices around their children, parent coach, your own therapist, maybe a support group. But, I have worked with somebody to support my own mental health because I think my regulation is a co-regulation with his. So I needed to really calm my nervous system down and learn some skills for my own benefit that then translated into how I could parent and support him. What came to mind when you asked that question, though, in a broader sense, was grief and loss, which started for me very early when he's diagnosed at the age of 3, and then progressively through school, wasn't invited to birthday parties, wasn't on sports teams, was, looked at kind of funny. And, I was always the like, what's wrong with her? Can't she parent her child? So that anxiety started building with me early. And so I think I just kind of managed to find people who were in similar situations, even if it was just one other mom, where we could have a play date and just look at each other and be like, oh my God, this is really hard. And we're completely isolated and stigmatized. So I think that community, and then having my own support system, whether that be a coach or a therapist, frankly, parents, siblings, friends in your community, they probably don't get it. So it does provoke anxiety. And that is somewhat tied to self-care, which I think that sometimes we hear the word self-care and that's like, oh, one more thing to put on my to-do list. Got to do that self-care. But it doesn't have to be anything other than what you like to do. So I would say, don't stop doing what you like to do. Carve out half an hour to take that walk or half an hour to watch a silly sitcom. Laughter works. So I think for me, the progressive anxiety management started early. So it wasn't like I had a kid who was doing so beautifully and then all of a sudden we hit crisis point. It was like the boiling frog. It's like, the water's getting hotter, the water's getting hot. Ooh, now the water's really hot. And so at the point where we had to make the decision, I'll just tell you frankly, it was a little scary, but I thought, I need a break. As hard as it was the right decision. And we actually told him, buddy, we need to try something that's a little different. And this is what's happening. But I think a lot of the work that I feel like I still do is around grief and loss. And that comes up still. And he's 23.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because that feels like something that honestly, we don't talk enough about, the grief and loss piece, because I think it's not just the grief and loss for, how you envisioned raising your child, like the milestones that they would hit, how that would play out for them as they launched into their own adulthood. But I also think that reflects you as a parent too, of like, what were you envisioning for yourself as a parent of a adolescent and a parent of a young adult? And then like, as they, again, like the evolution of those developmental stages that we're quote unquote supposed to hit. Yeah. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sure. And I will say that as he got older and he was developing better skills, as were we, because his dad and I had to really dive into, the grief and loss comes back. It's an upward spiral. You see progress, you feel good about your child, and then, compare is to despair. Something else happens and you see a peer or a colleague, and I'm not a big Facebook person, partly for this reason, is self-preservation means I have to keep my perspective with what is true for me and my family. And it still comes up as if he develops and goes into different stages. It would be great if he was graduating from college this year and doing something other than what he's doing. And what he's doing is his best life. But it's hard. It's still hard. And so I really appreciate that, because grief and loss is a thing and it's nothing to be ashamed about. Doesn't mean you're a bad parent. Doesn't mean that, you're in the boo-hoo, woe is me category. It just means like, it is what it is and you have to name it and move through it, and then look for resources to support a reframing, which I thankfully have. And I think I provide when I do some parent coaching.
So you hinted at, hey, this journey started when he was, it like really escalated, right? In terms of like out of home resources. So at age, what, 14? This is when... Okay, so now we're talking about a 9-year journey, because you just said he's 23.
Yes.
So fill us in.
How did we get to 23? Okay. We got here.
How did we get to 23? No, in a good way, right? Like you said, totally. This has been a process. So can you, if you feel comfortable kind of sharing what some of that treatment experience was like,
sure.
That would be helpful.
Sure. Well, I will say we had various left turns and always something that I maybe didn't expect. So I would also say to any parent facing a particularly interesting challenge raising a child that expecting the unexpected is just part of the deal, with especially a child who's got some learning and social emotional challenges. So we did do a very special assessment and stabilization that was a program specifically for children of neurodiverse children. And what I was hoping to get from that is a lot of kids are on the spectrum and they don't have the same interpersonal and emotional challenges my son had. So there's more here than just what we knew was already to be true. And so that was a really helpful guidepost for what came next. And he did do a therapeutic boarding school that wasn't specifically for neurodiverse kids, but was accepting and understanding of his way of communicating and some of his specific social emotional goals. And it was really, really a good experience for him. And it was, specifically something that was uniquely situated for him, may not be for every child who also is on the spectrum and has social emotional needs. So I want to be very clear that we were careful in that therapeutic boarding school experience. But he had some ongoing boarding school experience that had a lot of structure and good things for learning differences. And I'm very grateful we were able to access resources to give him that foundation through high school. He went to kind of what I call a quirky boy learning differences school. That's my name for it. Hopefully the owner of the school won't be offended by that. I don't think he would. And so that journey got us through high school. But I'll tell you, the young adult years weren't great because we had COVID. And there was a lot of regression during COVID. And so I would say one of the things that my son would even express as being one of the most impactful things he has done in his, journey from teenager to young adulthood is he did an outdoor wilderness program, adventure-based program with a very specific therapist that was picked out by us for him. And he will say that really had a huge impact on him. And I think he was ready for it. He was 20. It was the appropriate place at the right time with the right therapist. Yeah, he was challenged in different ways. He had different experiences. And as an adult parent working with a young adult child versus a teenager, he had different needs and different things he needed to express to us. And we had different things we needed to talk to him about. And, were we over pathologizing and over treating? I would say no, because where he is today, I don't think we would have gotten there without the support we got. And again, I was very grateful we were able to do that. But the work we did as a family in that particular type of experience was very different than we had done for the prior 4 years. And he will say that really set him up for some amazing work. And in fact, just recently, he started reconnecting with that therapist and doing some work over Zoom as a coach and mentor to just reconnect and maybe find some footing, which I think is amazing. And that just talks about that connection he made with that therapist at that point in his life. And it had a huge impact. So we've had lots of adventures in treatment. As you know, I often say to people, I'm going to be working until I'm 90. And you know what? Gratefully, I love what I do. But I will retire when I'm 90. I'm going to make it that long.
Well, and you slipped in something that I want to bring up, which I actually think is a pretty common question. You had highlighted that at some points or certain situations, you are also a parent coach. And so when I think about resources that are presented to parents, whether they're going through, regardless of what the treatment journey looks like for them, whether it's an adolescent, young adult, like you said, those that go through wilderness programming tend to have a little bit more of an intense experience, just for the experience itself.
Yep.
But there's a lot of resources that get tossed out at parents all the time. So as a professional that's working with parents, but also as a parent, you know, the experience for yourself, I'm just curious, like, what types of resources other than parent coaching maybe would you say is like a good reference point for parents that might be going through this experience right now?
Well, I would say, first of all, if you don't have an educational consultant guiding you through a program, and just so everybody knows, transparency, that is my son's experience launched me into this profession about 8.5 years ago. So, or 9 now that we are. And so I think being guided by somebody who absolutely knows how to streamline things, provide a lot of anxiety reduction, someone to bounce ideas off of. I can't imagine having done it without the woman I used, Rachel Sobel. Shout out to Rachel. You know, she held my hand when I needed to, and, you know, just is a wonderful person and professional. I think parent coaching is important to do. You know, I think the other tools are so individualized to the person and the community in which they live. I have had a lot of families feel very stigmatized and not want to talk to their community members. So I think that's hard. And then I've had other families who belong to a synagogue or a church or a community center, or, you know, there are even some special needs PTAs around the country, and there's a group there. I think it's very unique to go through the experience I had with residential treatment and not have a particularly strong group of community. And in the Bay Area, we're very lucky to have a program called Willows in the Wind, which is specifically parent support group for families whose children are in an out-of-home therapeutic setting of any kind, or perhaps it's been recommended and they need a safe space to talk to other parents who have been through it. And then, of course, they welcome alumni. And for many years, I was grateful to lead one of those groups pre-COVID. And now everything's online, and it's not the same experience for me personally as a facilitator. But that actually, even as a facilitator, often what we teach others is what we need for ourselves. And that really was an experience where, even in the midst of my own experience as a parent, I was a practicing consultant and was able to be in this community. There are resources out there, and I would just say, I think we need more. I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh, totally. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one more question, Jennifer. I really, again, appreciate you kind of talking about a lot of key points along the journey for those that are experienced a treatment experience, but also, again, you're talking about it from your own personal perspective. Is there anything that you haven't talked about that you feel like is really important to share? From, obviously, again, you're straddling the personal and professional lane in this space, but for a parent that is in this process right now, is there anything that you feel like you haven't said that you want to say to impart some additional support or advice?
Well, first I'll say it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We do the best we can, and when we know better, we do better. Thank you, Maya Angelou. So blaming yourself or letting somebody else tell you, well, if you had parented better, this wouldn't be happening. I won't swear, but I would if this wasn't your podcast, Joanna. That is just,
for it. You totally can.
That is just bullshit. That is bullshit. And so beating up on yourself is not going to make the situation better. And you have been the best parent you could ever be. You didn't show up to this world to be a shitty parent. You didn't have children to be like, yeah, I don't really care, whatever happens. No, it's a very intense experience, and you did your best. And there were things that came up that even the best pediatrician didn't warn you about or had tools ready to help you with. And the science of mental health with adolescents and little kids has evolved in the last 25 years significantly, and there's more to talk about. But if there's anything I could do, it would be to destigmatize parenting a kid who's a little out of the box, or who's super at risk, or who's kicking a cop car and making it to juvie because they just can't wrap their head around what's going on inside their body, it's not your fault. And I think a lot of parents really internalize that they must be doing something wrong because someone's telling them, or they just feel like, well, if I had been a better parent, my kid would be like Johnny next door, who just seems to have everything together, and, you know, it must be me. It isn't. Can we be better parents? Absolutely. Should we continue learning as we grow with our children and do that parallel process? 100%, or we're not going to be the most successful family we can. So continuing to learn and do our own development, important. But I think the stigma around having a child who doesn't fit in is really hard. And I would just say, take care of yourself, be the best person you can be, and know that you're doing your best every day. And there are a lot of people that want to be there to support you, and look for those people.
Thank you. That feels like the perfect ending point. Such a reminder that we are all doing the best that we possibly can, and more so for this special parent series. So Jennifer, thank you again for carving out some time in your schedule to share your story. And we'll make sure that there is contact information in the show notes of the podcast so folks can reach out to you, and also look up Willows in the Wind as you discussed, so things like that can be connected with. So thank you again.
Can I also talk about my Substack?
Oh, go for it.
I've just launched a Substack blog, and I hopefully will do some audio called What Do We Do Now? Shitstorms in Parenting. So just getting it out there, but once I get it out there, hopefully you guys can put it in the show notes, and you can go on Substack and subscribe and get little tips here and there about the shit shows that happen.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Make sure it's in the show notes.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guests for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. Put a face with a voice by accessing their interview on the newly formed successissubjective.org website. If you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at joanna@successissubjective.org. Be sure to check out the collegealternative.org and lilyconsulting.com websites for additional resources outside of podcasting. If you are listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe to the show. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Last but not least, Success is Subjective is listener-supported, made possible by our team and by you. You can support this podcast by joining the Patreon community at patreon.com/successissubjective. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.